In this short episode of Talking Clock, strapmaker Philip from Atelier Kai explains what to look out for when judging whether a watch strap is good or bad. Let's jump into it. How would you describe, or especially for viewers and even myself, like when I first got into watch collecting and especially into dress watches, I think the first major dress watch I sort of got was the Lange one. And like looking at the straps then, if you had asked me, honestly, I have no idea like what makes a good strap. And especially now that I think there are a lot of other options out there for consumers, could you just go through like what in your eyes makes a good strap and, elements that aren't so good for people to watch out for?
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of something that makes a good strap, I would say, so for making something good, I would split it down into two things. One would be good in the sense of the construction, and the second one is good in the sense of the beauty of it.
So when you say construction, does that just mean like putting things together, or
Construction, I'm talking more about the way that it's made to promote the longevity of the strap.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So for example, for construction wise, something that's very important that's often overlooked by strap makers who in say like Vietnam and all is how close the stitch starts to the lux.
Okay.
Yeah. So for optimally, you want the stitch to start really close to the lux, because at the end of the day, you got to remember that the strap is held together by the glue and the stitch, right? So at the end of the day, the glue might not hold forever. There's no guarantee that the glue will hold forever. But the stitching style that we do, which is saddle stitching by hands, this stitching style, it would actually hold forever. If even if one thread breaks, the whole stitch will actually stay together.
Okay.
Right? So what you want, right, is actually for the stitch to actually start as close to the lux as possible, so that even if the glue at the lux give way, the stitch actually holds the leather in place. So the hole at the lux does not actually open up. If you look at some other straps that are made, say for example, by other crafters, I would say this usually happens when they actually are making straps in mass and they're just trying to pump out volume. It's still handmade, but they're doing it in volume. So when you look at the straps, the stitch actually starts quite low from where the lux are. And what happens is that over time, the sides is going to start bulging out.
Yeah. Bulging out?
It's going to start bulging out because the glue at the sides will actually start to give way. Yeah. And the stitch starts too low to the point where if it gives way, there's no stitch to actually hold it down in place.
Okay, then it'll just like separate over time.
Exactly. So when you look at the strap, it's important to see where the stitch is actually starting. Yeah, because if once you actually know about this and you look at a whole bunch of ready-to-wear straps or basically handmade but made in mass somewhere else, you would actually notice that quite a lot of the straps, the stitches actually start quite low.
So as far as construction goes, I think the thing that you just talked about is quite interesting because it's not something that I was aware of either. Yeah. So that's essentially where the stitching starts. Then aside from that, on the construction aspect of things, what else would you look out for? Or maybe not look out for, but what else is important in that sense?
Okay, so in terms of the construction, something else that's important is the amount of reinforcement that is actually being done within the strap itself. Because basically, straps, as you wear it, you are going to tug on it quite a bit, right? So you want actually proper reinforcement within the strap itself. You want it to be lined with some sort of non-stretch material within the strap itself, so that over time, even as you tug it, as you pull it to open and close the strap,
right,
it doesn't actually pull out of shape and actually deform out of shape, and it actually retains the shape. But this is something that you can't really tell or see on first glance, especially when you're looking at pictures online. So this is something that you really have to, if you're able to, ask the crafter himself what kind of lining and reinforcements does he use. If you're not able to, then I guess it's really more on trust in terms of if this crafter has a certain level of craftsmanship, it's highly likely that he will use lining and reinforcements, proper lining and reinforcements within the strap itself.
So for reference, what sort of materials are generally used for this sort of thing?
Okay, so in terms of materials, there's one material which is called Velodon. It's a very thin 0.1 mm thick non-stretch material. it's used by Hermes as well in their watch straps and bangles. Yeah. So Velodon is something that's being used. Another thing is called Salamander. Salamander is bonded leather, and but that one comes in minimum thickness of 0.4. So Salamander is another thing that crafters can use to actually reinforce the strap and make it non-stretch. Yeah. But all this, like I said, is actually within the strap itself. So it's quite hard to actually know that if it's being used unless you're able to speak to your strapmaker directly.
So let's say that you're just to buy a ready stock strap. What are the signs that the strap will show if it's not reinforced properly, like over time, for example?
Not reinforced properly over time. I guess the strap will start to deform a little bit. It will stretch in certain places where you apply more tension and all. The stretch and all that won't be that noticeable, but in terms of the longevity of the strap, it will definitely affect the strap. However, that being said, straps are quite straps are actually items that actually wear out quite quickly if you wear it on a constant daily basis.
Yep.
So if you wear a watch on a constant daily basis, even a well reinforced strap, it's gonna last maximum maybe I'd say 2 to 3 years. If you wear it on a daily basis, if you wear it in rotation, yes, it can last for 10 years.
But even in Singapore's humidity, is that a factor, or is it just like more of a material thing?
Even in humidity, it's okay. So humidity will affect straps in the sense of the sweat, the amount of sweat that's actually being produced on your wrist. Because end of the day, even if the lining of the strap is
Yep.
actually water resistant,
Yep.
right? But the more you sweat, the sweat actually goes into the thread. The thread actually runs through the strap. Yeah. So even if the strap is well made, even if it's completely waterproof, fully lined, if you sweat excessively and you sweat a lot, it actually can degrade the strap faster. And this is actually there's something interesting also that I want to talk about. It's actually the whole fallacy of rubber linings. Rubber linings and how people seem to be obsessed with them being, more waterproof, you can sweat a lot in it and all. If you think about the construction of a rubber lined strap, say for example, if it's leather on top and rubber below, right? If it's leather on top, rubber below, most likely the strap is actually going to be stitched as well. It's not going to be unstitched because the glue that holds rubber to leather is not as strong as leather to leather.
Yeah.
Right? So when you actually have stitching running through, and it's leather on top and rubber below, even if it gets to a point where the rubber lining is more useful than a water resistant leather lining, the amount of sweat that you're actually producing is actually already seeping into the thread, which is seeping into the leather itself, which is in turn degrading the leather as well. So
see.
in that sense, at the point where rubber lining becomes useful, you're already sweating way too much. You're actually already degrading the leather.
Okay.
So rubber lining is actually only useful if it's rubber lined and stitchless.
Then pure glue, but then you run the risk.
You run the risk of the leather peeling away from the rubber.
Just completely
Yes.
okay. Interesting. Then is there anything else from a construction standpoint that you think is important to highlight? Or
Construction standpoint, no. But in terms of, say, the beauty of the strap, there are things to take note of. For example, one big thing in terms of the beauty of the strap would be the size of the thread being used in relation to the size of the hole that is punched. The hole that is punched is actually, I mean, in terms of handmade straps, we actually punch the holes first and then we stitch it after. So the holes are not punched as it's being sewn, like on a sewing machine. So in terms of that, it's really important to choose a set of it's what we call pricking irons. It's what we use to actually punch the holes in the strap. It's important to choose a set of pricking irons whose teeth width is actually small enough such that when you stitch into the strap, the stitch that you lay down actually fills up the hole. You don't want a situation, for example, where the hole is extremely big and the stitch is extremely small. You're going to be seeing an excessive amount of hole, and the whole strap just looks really messy, really
Right.
ugly,
Yeah.
just not refined and well constructed. Another thing as well is that the tip of the strap usually ends in a point. So what's important for the tip of the strap is that that the crafter actually ends it in a point and doesn't take the easy way out and just use the pricking irons to go around, because the pricking irons are actually angled at a 45-degree angle. If you actually take the easy way out and prick all the way around, you actually end up with quite a big gaping hole that's unnecessary. What you want is a fine point at the tip for the strap, for the thread to end. You don't want something unnecessary, like a big gaping hole. But all this is just about the beauty of the strap. In terms of the longevity, all this doesn't really matter. The longevity, all that matters is really using the proper glue, having the stitch as close to the lugs as possible, and as well as the lining. All this is actually just beauty, but it does add. I mean, when you're throwing all these straps onto 100K, 200K, 300K watches, beauty definitely does play a part.
So just now, as we were talking sort of off camera, there's actually one last element of construction or strap construction that you think is important to go through. Could you just like talk about what it is?
Yeah. So in general, when you're wearing a strap, what you don't want, what you're trying to prevent is actually water or moisture actually entering into the strap itself, where it can actually start to degrade the strap. So typically, strap makers usually construct straps with an open loop right at the keepers. So this is the traditional way that most strap makers, as they learn from other strap makers, this is the way that they've learned how to do it. If you see most of your handmade straps from most brands, it actually has this open concept. And the risk about this is that if this is right at your wrist, and if it's on a day where you start to sweat excessively, this being open is actually exposing the inner parts of the leather. So even if your lining is water resistant, even if your edges are sealed with edge paint, but having this open area would result in maybe moisture going in and possibly degrading the strap quicker than it should be. For myself, I actually learned how to make straps through trial and error and experimentation. And as such, I'm not sure how to describe it as well, but the way that I've done it, my straps actually have a completely sealed off construction at loops. So in that sense, it's completely sealed off by paint, and there is no way that moisture can ever go in. Yeah. It's just something small that I think possibly could matter just only to certain individuals if they actually do sweat a lot.
Then is the difference usually a cost thing or just like a preference of like different methodology of making straps?
It's a different methodology of making straps, I would say, and I guess it's more about consideration for the end consumer.
Okay.
Yeah. Where most crafters, they learn from other crafters. They are crafting an item for the sake of crafting an item. But for me, when I'm making straps, when I'm, for example, like the consideration about where the stitches should be, consideration about completely closed construction with no areas, no gaps for moisture to enter. All this was actually done with me actually keeping the end consumer in mind, what actually promotes the longevity of the strap for the consumer.
Thank you for watching. Part 2 of this podcast with Philip will be out soon, where we discuss how he created his strap business. Also, do note that this podcast is now on Spotify. Link in the description below.